Hello everyone, Jeff with the Green Review here. Everyone asks the question whether the goldfish and koi will live in the pond over the winter time. When there's ice over the top, what do you do? And we can explain all that, but it's snowing out. So let's use the Green Review magic wand and move to a different season where we can talk about it in a little bit easier conditions. Well, this is much better. That was back in February and this is in the summertime. We have a lot of people who ask us the question, what do we do with our fish in the winter time? And the reaction I always have is to ask them, what do you think? You know, the fish stay here in the winter time in the pond, just like in nature, fish stay in the water in the pond. So what else would we do with them? The reaction is natural though, because when you walk up to an area of water this big in nature, you don't see any fish. Maybe a couple little minnows swimming around, or maybe a small fish that zooms away when you walk up there. But in a pond this size, it's overstocked. All our goldfish and koi ponds are overstocked. So when the ice caps it over in the winter time, there could be a problem. We like the ice on the pond in the winter time because it helps to insulate the water from the colder air. But at the same time, the fish, frogs, turtles, the bacteria, the algae, the bigger plants, all consume oxygen during the process of respiration. There's very little photosynthesis going on, and without the air surface being there, there can't be any gas exchange. So eventually, all of the organisms in the pond would consume all the oxygen and everything would die. And since we don't know when eventually is, we want to do something in advance to protect our fish. Water is a very interesting substance. At about 40 degrees, it's denser than water, warmer or colder. So a 40-degree puddle will develop in the bottom of this pond that the fish can stay in, and then the ice will insulate that 40-degree puddle from the colder air. So like I said, we want ice on top. We just need a small area open so we can have gas exchange with the atmosphere. We can do that in several ways. We can use an air pump that uses air stones that pump in the air. They'll bubble up on the surface and keep a small area open. The problem is they're pumping in cold air, and so they kind of refrigerate the water. The air stones work fine in southern states or areas where the water is going to only freeze for a day or two at a time. The next thing we would use is what's called a deicer. It's a device that keeps a small area of water at 35 to 40 degrees. It's not trying to keep the water warm by any means, just to keep an area open in the ice. Now there are deicers that are small, that are about 100 watts of electricity, and so they don't put out very much electricity, so you might think they're energy efficient. But actually all they do is keep a small area open. And in the southern or middle part of the United States, that can be fine for a day or two at a time. But in northern states where the ice is going to freeze much thicker and for much longer, those small deicers don't work. There's no such thing as energy efficiency in that respect, a small deicer versus a large deicer. It's like putting a jar of water in a freezer and putting a candle under it. It may not be able to keep up. It's not putting out very much heat, but it also may not be able to keep up. A blowtorch running shorter periods of time could put out enough heat to keep that ice in the freezer from freezing and use exactly the same amount of energy as the small one, but just using it in shorter bursts of time. And then when it's really cold, it'll actually work, whereas the smaller one will not be able to keep up. So we have another deicer here. This one is made by Allied Precision, and it's it floats on the surface. That's where the ice is. That's where we want it to be. And so it works really well. This one's about 1,000 watts. Another approach that Allied Precision has is to use a small water pump down here to pump water up here to get it oxygenated, and then let it trickle back into the pond. There's a small heating coil in here that heats this water up to around 40 degrees. So it's in contact with extremely cold air, maybe even below zero, but it gets the water back to the temperature that it was being pumped out at down lower in the pond at around 40 degrees. So it keeps the air and oxygenated water in the pond but doesn't chill the pond. So it's a very nice way to do it as well, and uses very little electricity. It's a very small pump. Then uses a little bit more electricity up here. So there's several different ways of doing them. If you want to make it more energy efficient, you can put a roof covering over any of these. I will put this one in the corner of my pond, put a piece of plywood over that corner, weight it down with a couple of rocks so it doesn't fall, and then the heat that escapes the water around this will bounce off that plywood and back and forth around that area and keep a larger area open. You can use plastic, you can use a domed piece of plastic like a greenhouse on floats. There's a lot of ways you can use to insulate this and to give it a larger area of influence in the pond. So we leave our fish in the pond over the winter time. We just need to keep a small area open, and it's enjoyable to watch. We don't want to have the waterfalls running because we don't want them to freeze and cause problems. If the waterfall freezes or water can go out of the pond, we don't want that to happen. If the pipes freeze because the water got too low to go into the skimmer, then we would also have a problem. The pipes would all freeze and crack. So in the fall we will clean out those pipes. We'll blow with a shop vac or a leaf blower, clean those out, and then just let the fish hibernate over the winter time. It's an easy thing to do, and as long as we give a little bit of care, we will be fine. I've seen ponds freeze over in just one night. The fish have problems. So we want to be proactive, and when the weather starts turning cool, we will put this in advance and just let it float. It won't be turning itself on until the water gets to the point where it needs to be on. So it can float in the corner and be fine without any energy being spent at all. So that's all there is to taking care of our fish in the wintertime. They don't eat, they just go dormant. And so when somebody asks you, what do you do with your fish in the wintertime? Now you'll know. We just leave them in the pond and keep a small area open. If there happens to be ice, then they'll be fine. So that's it. I appreciate your watching all these videos, and if you have any questions, go to greenerview.com, ask us some questions there, or on Facebook at Greenerview Garden Column. Thanks for watching.